Aloha Yellow Track, this is Mrs. Kama. I am going to go over grammar review and grammar lessons that we are continuing. Today we are going to focus on apostrophes and quotation marks. If you take out your grammar review notebook from your interactive notebook, you will notice the page on apostrophes. It's entitled Hard and Fast Rules for Using Apostrophes. Let's take a look at the different rules when it deals with apostrophes. Number 1, do not use for numbers that are plural nouns. The example given is, I grew up in the 1990s, period. Okay, so you notice there's no apostrophe between the 0 and the S. Okay, so that's rule number 1. Do not use for numbers that are plural nouns. Number 2, do not use for capital letters that are plural nouns or abbreviations. So the example given is, we learned our ABCs, period. Okay, notice it's not ABC apostrophe S. Or, looking at the abbreviation, Jim sells RVs. Okay, there's no apostrophe in here, so make sure you follow that rule when it comes for capital letters that are plural nouns or abbreviations. Rule number 3, do use for contractions in the place of missing letters. So if I had a word like your, okay, it's UR, so it's U apostrophe RE, or don't, DON apostrophe T, that stands for do not. Okay, so you can use for contractions in the place of missing letters. Okay, rule number 4, do use to show possession when something belongs to one person or thing. Okay, the example is the hat's feather. Okay, that's showing possession when something belongs to one person or thing. Who does the feather belong to? The hat. So the hat's feather. Or Jenny's bike. Who does the bike belong to? Jenny. The child's mother. Whose mother is that? The child's. Okay, so do use to show possession when something belongs to one person or thing. Okay, rule number 5, do use after the plural S to show possession when something belongs to more than one person or thing. Make the noun plural first, then add the apostrophe. Again, do use after the plural S to show possession when something belongs to more than one thing or person, and make the noun plural first, then add the apostrophe. So here we have the examples, the girls' room, okay, plural girls, or the children's father, or the dog's toys. Okay, so it's showing a possession after the plural S because it belongs to more than one person or thing. Rule number 6, do use apostrophe S to show possession of a name that ends in S. So Mr. Jones, apostrophe S, flies. Texas is apostrophe S, weather. Okay? So it ends with an S, but you still will use an apostrophe S to show possession. Okay, and the last rule, number 7, its and its apostrophe S are special cases. Its means something belongs to it, and it apostrophe S is a contraction for it is or it has. So look at the example. The dog wagged its tail, okay, because the tail belongs to the dog, so it has just an S after the IT. Or it's going to be a warm day. See the contraction, it apostrophe S, because it stands for it is going to be a warm day. Or it's been a long time. It has been a long time. Okay? So, going over these rules, what I want you to do is you have this in your interactive notebook. Just go over it, get familiarized with it so that you understand the rules when using apostrophes. Okay? Now let's take a look at the examples. If you look on the next page. Okay. So on this page, the example that's given to you is Jeremy's brand new fishing pole is already broken. It tells you in each sentence below, it contains mistakes. Use your hard and fast rule sheet to identify the mistakes and correct them in the space below. Always read the directions first before you dive into the assignment. Okay, then look on the bottom. The direction says, click on the purple box, type in your answer. The first one has been done for you. Okay, so it's missing a word here. You're going to type in the correct way of writing that apostrophe. Okay, so it says Jeremy's brand new fishing pole is already broken. If you look at that, the correct way to write it is Jeremy apostrophe S. Okay, and the reason why I select to write that, Jeremy's apostrophe S, is if I look back at the rules, I think this pertains to rule number 4, where it says, do use apostrophe S to show possession when something belongs to one person or thing. Okay, so it's showing that the brand new fishing pole belongs to Jeremy. Okay, so that's why it's Jeremy apostrophe S. All right, so let's look at this next one. Don't overuse the apostrophe. Okay, now we're looking at this word don't. Okay, that's not written correctly. So you're going to click on this purple box and you're going to type in the correct answer. And if you typed in capital D-O-N apostrophe T, then you are absolutely, positively correct. And the reason why you're correct is if you look at rule number 3, where it says, do use the contraction in the place of missing letters. So, don't is for do not, right? And that was a missing letter. So, do not overuse the apostrophe. So, don't overuse the apostrophe. Good job, students. Now, let's move down. You're going to do the rest of this because you have an idea of what to do. Okay? So, I'm going to go over now the hard and fast rules for quotation marks. So let's look at rule number 1. Quotation marks should only be used for direct quotes, not indirect quotes. So the example they give you is direct. Quotation mark, close the door, comma, quotation mark, shouted Dad, period. Okay, that's a direct. So it should be used only for direct quotes. Now, if you did an indirect quote like, Dad told me to close the door, then you will not use any quotation marks. Okay, rule number 2. Use comma before and after the direct quotation in a sentence. Commas always go inside quotation marks. So the example given is, Jared said, comma, quotation mark, it's the third house on the right, comma, quotation mark, and then hung up the phone, period. Okay, so you notice how the comma is before the quotation mark, and then the comma is right before the quotation mark at the end as well. Okay, let's look at rule number 3. Use a comma to interrupt direct quotations or before or after a direct quotation. So here the example it shows, quotation mark, why, comma, quotation mark, I asked, comma, quotation mark. Must you leave? Question mark, quotation mark. Then I put a quotation mark. Here's another example. Because I have to work in the morning, comma, quotation mark, replied Sam, period. I laughed and said, comma, quotation mark, right, comma, I forgot, period, and quotation mark. Okay, so again, you can use the comma to interrupt, direct quotations, or before or after a direct quotation. Okay, so again, it interrupts, like you see how it interrupts the sentence, or for a direct quotation. Now, look at rule number 4. When a question is asked inside quotations, use a question mark instead of a comma. In the case of a statement, always use a comma in place of a period. Again, when a question is asked inside quotations, use a question mark instead of a comma. In the case of a statement, always use comma in place of a period. So here are the examples. Quotation mark, when are you coming? Question mark, quotation mark, asked Joe, period. Or, here's another example. Quotation mark, I'll be there on Friday, comma, quotation mark, I said, period. Okay, so again, you can use a question mark in the quotation mark inside instead of a comma. But in the case of a statement, where they're just saying a statement, always use a comma in place of a period here. Okay. Let's look at rule number 5. Use quotation marks for titles or publications that are parts of a bigger publication. The bigger publication is underlined or written in italics. Okay, so the example, quotation marks, okay, colon, stories, songs, poems, articles, television episodes. Okay, you would underline books, albums, magazines, periodicals, and television shows. Okay, so again, use quotation marks for titles of publications that are part of bigger publications. So again, use quotation marks for stories, songs, poems, articles, and television episodes. And then here it says, the bigger publication is underlined or written in italics. So you would underline books, albums, magazines, periodicals, and television shows. Okay? The last rule for quotation marks is when a question ends with a title in quotations, place the question mark outside of the quotation marks. This is the only time that punctuation is placed outside of the quotation mark. Okay, so look at this wrong example. It says, do you like the song, comma, quotation mark, let it go, question mark, quotation mark. That's wrong. Okay, because it says when a question ends with a title in quotations, place the question mark outside of the quotation marks. So the correct thing to be is, do you like the song, comma, quotation mark, let it go, quotation mark, then the question mark. Okay, so there's 6 rules for quotation marks. Familiarize yourself with it. And as you go over it again, then let's go ahead and practice your review for quotation mark. Now, again, let's read the directions before we get started. So it says, each sentence below contains mistakes. Use your hard and fast rules sheet to identify the mistakes and correct them in the space below. So it says, my teacher said that it's important to follow grammar rules. Okay? Now, you know that this is a mistake because it already told you in the directions, each sentence below contains mistakes. So we're going to rewrite this, in which I did over here. And the correct way to rewrite it is, my teacher said that it's important to follow the grammar rule. Now, why did I rewrite it like this? Okay, look back at your rules. I believe it applies to rule number 1 because it says you will use quotation marks only for direct quotes, not indirect quote. Okay, and if you look at the examples, so this is an example of an indirect quote because it says my teacher said that, so you shouldn't have any quotation mark here. Okay, let's look at number 2. We'll do one more together. Have you read the poem, comma, Annabel Lee? Question mark. Now, how should this be written? Where should I have my quotation mark? Okay, think about it. Look at your rules. Okay, so if you were to rewrite it, you should have written, have you read the poem, comma, put your quotation mark right before Annabelle, and put your quotation mark right before this question mark. Okay, so quotation mark and then quotation mark between the E and the question mark. And the reason why I suggested that is I would refer you back to rule number 6, where it says, when a question ends with the title in quotations, place the question mark outside of the quotation mark. So it should be like this. Do you like the song, comma, let it go. So yeah, it applies to rule number 6. Okay, because it's asking you if you read the poem, and that's the title of the poem, Annabel Lee. So you will put the quotation mark here before the A, and you put the quotation mark here right after the E before the question mark. All right? So you folks will get to try and practice for the rest of this worksheet. Okay? And this is review. It's asking you to go back to the rules for your quotation marks and apostrophes. So those are the 2 things we're focusing today. Okay? Now this is your grammar review for the notebook. When you are done doing the grammar review, you are now going to be tackling the digital grammar practice worksheet. So let me pull this up. Now, for the digital grammar practice worksheet, you are going to do lesson 1.3 using apostrophes, and then you will do lesson 1.4 for the quotation marks. So let's look over the instructions on the bottom of the page. It says click on the red boxes, so that's over here, and type your answers. You have 2 boxes, purple and red. You're going to type your answers on the red boxes. When we go over this worksheet, you will type the correct answers in the purple boxes. So when I give you the correct answers, you'll type it in the purple boxes. So for now, you're going to practice being a self-directed learner, which is our general learner outcome number 1, and just do your best. Okay? So let's read the directions together. A. Understanding the rules. You will write the letter of the specific rule, its, with apostrophe S, or its. Okay, use the rule next to the sentence that demonstrates the rule. Okay, so here's the sentence. It's beginning to feel a lot like spring. Now, what rule does this follow? Is it A or B? Okay, it has an apostrophe, so you're going to type in the letter B. Okay, we should just let the flu run its course. Okay, this has no apostrophe, so what rule does it follow? A. So you'll put the A right there. Okay. Now, identifying errors. You are going to write the letter C if the sentence uses the apostrophes correctly, and IC if the sentence used the apostrophes incorrectly. So if you read sentence number 5, Mercedes' backpack was full of books. Okay, Mercedes' backpack was full of books. Now, is that used correctly? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? If you said yes, it is used correctly, you are absolutely right. So you will go ahead and type in your letter C right in that red square. Okay, so for numbers 5 through 10, you are going to write the letter C if the sentence uses the apostrophe correctly, or you will type in IC if you feel the sentence uses the apostrophe incorrectly. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Okay, this is section C, using apostrophes. It says, for each sentence below, write the word that needs an apostrophe correctly or in the corresponding line below. If the sentence does not need an apostrophe, you will write NA on the line. Okay, so NE means not applicable. So again, if it needs an apostrophe in that sentence, you will write the word that needs that apostrophe correctly. So let's look at sentence 11. 11 says, I can't wait for the auditions after school. Okay, one of these words needs an apostrophe in there. And if you see it, you will type it in here. So the word that needs an apostrophe is can't. So I will type can't, apostrophe T. Okay, so you write the correct answer in there. Got it? Okay, so each sentence you will go down and write the correct answer of what needs an apostrophe in there. Okay, and that's how you do part C. Okay, and don't worry, just read it carefully. When you look at it and you see the word with a plural and S, just figure out, now does this word need an apostrophe? And look back at the rules. Okay, always look back. If you need help, go back. That's why I had you folks create an interactive notebook, because this is going to be for your reference. Okay, that way you can always go back what you glued in for your reference. Okay, because it tells you the rules. Okay, with that being said, let's move on to the next digital grammar practice, and that's using quotation marks. Okay, so again, we'll read the rules. On the bottom it says, click on the red boxes, type out your answers. We will type the correct answer in the purple boxes. Okay, so remember, you're typing your answers in the red boxes. So let's look at section A, read the direction. Determine which rule for using quotation marks each sentence demonstrates, and then write the letter of the rule on the line. So let's look at this rules. A, only use quotation marks for direct quotes, not indirect quotes. B, use comma before and after the direct quotation in a sentence. Commas always go inside quotation marks. C, Use comma to interrupt direct quotation before or after a direct quotation. D. When a question is asked inside a quotation, use a quotation mark instead of a comma. E. Use quotation marks for titles of publications that are part of bigger publications. F. When a question ends with a title in quotations, place the quotation mark outside of the quotation marks. Okay? So remember, where are you going to write your answers? In the red box. Okay? So let's take a look at example 1. It says, quotation mark, where are you going today? Question mark, quotation mark, I asked my parents. Now, which rule does this apply? Where are you going today? I asked my parents. If you look at this very carefully, you may see it applies B, right? Use comma before and after the direct quotation. Oh, no, not B. Use quotation. Where are you going today? Question marks in there. When a question asked inside a quotation, use a question mark instead of a comma. Yeah, D. Okay, where are you going today? So D. And A. A and D. Yeah, you can have more than one. Okay. Have you ever heard the Monster Jam? Question mark. So when you look at that, the question mark is outside of the quotation mark. So what rule applies to that? You see it? F. Okay, so on the top, I would have D. And on number 2, I would have F. All right. Good job. Okay, let's look at section B. Recognizing proper use. It says determine whether each sentence correctly uses quotation marks by writing Y for yes or N for no on the line. And again, you're going to write your answers on the red boxes. So if I look in my section 5, I can't believe they didn't play, quotation mark, the Macarena, quotation mark, at the dance. Now, did they use the quotation marks by writing correctly? If you feel they did, then write the letter Y. If you feel they didn't use it correctly, then use the letter N. Okay? My mom says, quotation mark, cats don't really eat birds, quotation mark, when they catch them. Okay? Now, would that be correct or incorrect? So, yes or no, if they used it correctly using quotation marks by writing yes or and no on the line. Okay, so section B, you're going to answer by using Y or N. Okay, let's look at section C, using quotation marks correctly. Let's read the directions again. On the bottom, for section C, click on the red boxes, type your answers. Some answers may be none. First 2 have been done for you. We'll type out the correct answers in the purple boxes when we make the corrections. So right now, you are going to type in here, in the red boxes, okay? When we go over corrections, you'll type the correct answers in the red purple boxes. Okay, so let me zoom this up again. So let's look at the example. And I did 11 and 12 for you. So it says, using quotation marks correctly. Each sentence in the paragraph is missing quotation marks. Add quotation marks in the correct places. If a sentence does not need quotation marks, don't do anything to that sentence. Okay, so look at sentence 11. It says, according to the British Museum, comma, the Magna Carta is one of the world's most celebrated documents, period. Now, why does this not need a quotation mark? Okay, it's none because it's an indirect quote. Okay, so 11 should be none. Look at number 12. The Magna Carta was also called the Great Charter, period. Okay, we know that, let me unzoom. The Great Charter should have quotation marks, okay, because that's one of the rules. That's the name of the thing. So write down what should have a quotation mark in the box. So whatever answer should have quotation mark, even if it's a sentence, or someone said something, then put the quotation mark in front and in the back of it. Okay? Questions? If you have any questions, if you have any, affirmation you want to ask or concerns, don't hesitate to contact your teachers during office hours at 1:35 to 2:35, or you can text or call our Google Voice or email us. Okay, but just do your best. Okay, this is going over our grammar, and we're focusing today on apostrophes and quotation marks. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like, oh my gosh. Just take one step at a time and do your best. And if I can share with you the word fail. When you hear the word fail, I want you to think of that in a positive mindset. Fail means first attempt in learning. So if you feel that, oh, I'm going to fail at this, hey, it's your first attempt in learning, because we are going to provide you with the correct answers so that you can see if you did it correctly or if you didn't do it correctly, what it should have been. And by providing you with the correct answers, when you go over it and you change your answers, you make the corrections, then, it gives you an opportunity to bring up your grade. As long as we learn from our mistakes, okay? Because fail means first attempt in learning. So we're in this together. You'll do a good job. Don't stress over this and just go for it. Okay? So until then, do your best, and I'll see you later. Aloha.